Hello, I'm Dave Frickman. In this video I'm going to show you how I carve this little fellow. It takes about 10 minutes to carve, and then we'll go through the painting steps as well. Let's get started. The wood I'm using here is a piece of eastern white cedar. It's a slice taken from a split log. Cedar is readily available in the area where I happen to live, and it seems to work really well with the tools I use. When I cut it this way, I'm carving primarily into the end grain, which works exceptionally well with these tools. The tool that you see me using right now is a 4.5-inch grinder, just a standard hardware tool available at a hardware store. The sandpaper I'm using is probably about a 50 grit, maybe 60. It's a really nice tool for roughing out. I'm working inside my carving booth that you may have seen in the opening of the video, so I don't have to wear a dust mask. All the dust is concealed behind glass and drawn out through the dust collector. Now I have switch tools I'm using here. It's a DeWalt tool sold for people making holes in sheetrock. Seems to work well for me. The bit is a 1/2-inch barrel-shaped structured carbide bit. These bits are sold by most wood carver supply outfits. As you can see, I've roughed out the eyes, being careful to leave the tip of the nose as the part that protrudes the most. It's kind of difficult to add wood if I accidentally cut off the nose. Now I'm getting ready to put in the mouth. I guess I'll do the eyebrows first. You'll notice I'm using good leather gloves while I work. These tools are not as dangerous as, say, a chainsaw, but they certainly can do damage. And leather gloves have saved my knuckles more than once. I am wearing hearing protection, and I've muted the audio. If I had left it in, all you would hear is the rumble of the dust collector and the whine of the tools, and it would be difficult to hear anything over that. I'm just finishing up with this tool, and then I'm going to go to a smaller version of the same thing. I have a Black & Decker, although I'm not very fussy about what brand I use. You'll notice I didn't draw anything on the wood before I started. I usually don't, but on occasion, if it's a more complicated piece, I will sketch out what I want to do before I actually start. Now I'm switching to my Black & Decker tool with another barrel-shaped structured carbide bit, again sold primarily for wood carvers, power carvers. And I'm just going to go in and put in some detail that I couldn't do with the larger version of this tool. I should mention that cedar, while it's a nice wood for carving with these tools, you do have to be careful. The dust is a little toxic, and as you'll see when I'm painting it, you also have to be careful to seal it really well. Otherwise, the tannins come through and discolor the paint after a period of time. Just finishing up with this tool. I generally, on a piece like this, don't like to have to switch bits or switch tools very often. I like to do everything I need to do with one tool and then pick up the other one and go. A few more details here. And the next tool is a very similar tool, this one made by Proxxon, which I think a German outfit, and it's a nice smooth tool for fine work. The bit I'm using is a carbide bit. It's got an end cut on the bit, and again it's a barrel-shaped bit. Gives a nice sharp line wherever I cut. But as I said, it's a 90-degree angle. It's going through and cleaning up. I'm going to put in the eyes. I like to carve the upper lid of the eye and just paint in the lower lid. As I'm finishing up the details, I'll mention that when I work in cedar, I always like to give it a nice coat of shellac. It's the first step. Shellac, when it dries, let it dry for a day, and it firms up any little fuzzies left so that when I sand it, I can get the fuzzies off real easy. I'll show you that. Here I'm just cleaning up, sharpening up the cuts. A few more details. Well, that's it for the carving in the carving booth. Now we'll go through the finishing steps. First, of course, is putting on a coat of shellac. As I mentioned, it firms up the wood and gives it a nice surface for sanding. I use a flap sander on my drill press. I like the softness that I get when I use a flap sander. I know a lot of wood carvers like a nice sharp surface, but I like it softened by the sander. It gives it a gentler feel, I think. Now I'm putting on one of several coats of poly to seal in the tannins, and now I'm going to cover any part of it that's going to wind up white or flesh colored with white paint. 2 coats, of course. I'm using acrylics here. And now an acrylic flesh color goes on the face. If I have it, the white done properly, I only need 1 coat of flesh color. And now a nice maroon, dark red for the hat. I always like to use a darker color blushed with a lighter color. Never the other way around. So I'm using a dark red, and I'll come back later and blush it with a light red, a brighter red. Same with the green. I'm going to put the green on the leaves, starting out with a dark green, come back later with a bright green. Now the most important part of painting, the eyes. I'm putting in white. I'm not real careful about where it goes because no edges will remain when I'm done. When I go in with the blue, the only edge that's important is the edge between the blue and the white. And you'll see why as I progress. Same with the black, the only edge that's important is going to be the edge between the black and the blue. I always have my eyes looking off to the side. Not always, but almost always. Gives a little whimsical look to them. Now I'm putting a brown in the upper lid, just to add some definition there. It seems when I don't do that, the eyes look rather vacant. And then I'll use flesh color to define the lower edge of the eye and give him kind of a smile by closing the eyes a little bit. I think it gives it a nice happy face look. And a little toothpick I use to put a little glimmer in the eye. There we go. There are the eyes. Oh, the bright red to give the hat some life. And then a bright green. Santa needs some rosy cheeks and a red nose, so here I'm putting some blush on. It sort of brings the skin to life. Always be careful to wet the surface before I start this process. Little trick of the trade. And now the poly sealer before the stain. It's very important before I start staining the piece, because if I don't put a sealer on, the stain will lift the paint right off. Here goes the stain, just using brown acrylic paint. Get it on the whole surface, and then first use a dry paper towel to remove the stain, and then a wet paper towel to clean it up, give the surface a brighter look. And one final coat of poly. Protect the finish. And we're done. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thank you for watching. I'll try to put a few more videos up soon.